Hello, everybody. Finally. Good round of applause.
Oh,
Good.
thanks.
We lost only like 3 people. If you see wrong colors next to you, poke them. So, hello, everybody. My name is Juhani, and I'm the one who does development. So we put these tags in our shirts. I don't know if you guys can see, so you can difference if we look like brothers otherwise.
So yeah, my name is Pierluigi. I'm the designer, also working as NetMobile.
So today we talk about animations. How many of you were in Nick's talk, were listening Nick's talk just now? Awesome warm-up. Thanks, Nick. I don't know if Nick's here anymore. The titles might sound like we overlap. I just looked through the Nick's talk and we overlap like 3 slides, and I promise I skipped them so we don't talk about the same topic. But the idea is still, we talk about animations, why it matters. We try to get you motivated to add animation to your application and explain you when you shouldn't add. What we're not covering, so this is not going to be a tutorial to motion layout or animation framework. Nick's talk was great for it, and there's talk tomorrow about motion layout. So we're not going to be teaching you tutorial writing code, but we're going to be talking about other stuff.
So yeah, we want to talk about motion, but in the first place, why do we consider motion important? So first point could be quite straightforward. If we look at this example from the Google Home onboarding, I'm pretty sure now we are all looking at the right example of the screen, the moving one. And that's because our eyes are actually naturally attracted by the movement. So our brain kind of developed that way. So our attention raises when we see moving objects. But when we come to UI, there are also other reasons why motion is important. If we look at the Google Dots, for example, which are part of the Google branding, in their static form, they don't say to us that much, right? But if we add motion to them, we can see actually that they can communicate a quite wide range of different states and feedback. Motion is also important to communicate the hierarchy in the UI. So we see, for example, how elements can relate to each other, or which navigational gesture the user can take to move from one context to the other. Motion is also important to give some hints to the user. For example, use this specific gesture, or for example, to highlight specific elements, like in this case, hey, the basket is here, and that item went exactly into this basket. And finally, motion could also be used for reinforcing the brand. Duolingo and MailChimp are very good examples of how the brand or motion is used to highlight specific moments in the user journey. For example, to celebrate with an high five that a mail campaign has been sent, or that a lesson, for example, is being completed. Or, for example, specific critical moments, like just before sending the campaign, or when you don't get back to the app since a while. But there are also a couple of principles that we have to, or guidelines that we have to take in consideration while implementing animations in general. The first one, it's of course like that animation must be meaningful, must have a meaning. We should always, like every UI element or new feature, ask ourselves, why are we implementing it? Is it actually because it's helpful for the user? There are, for example, some we mentioned before, like animation can reinforce the brand, but if, like in this example from the Google guidelines, if we launch the brand or the logo animation every time we open the app from the background, we are actually distracting the user from his journey. So it's not really helpful. It's just basically meaningless. And also, animation should not distract the user from their journey, from consuming the content, and also it should not conflict with the UI patterns. Like in these examples, if we bring animation in such a core elements of the navigation, like the FAB in this case, it doesn't really feel good. It's too much, definitely. And last but not least, we shouldn't try to over-exaggerate, so over-animate. Animation should still feel fluid, feel natural, and they shouldn't waste time. So we shouldn't exaggerate with animation.
All right. So designers know all of this. What's our role as developer in these parts? I think that we as developers, the most important thing for us is to understand Android. We need to be very deep in the platform. We know, but we are not just passive partner in creating animation in the applications. We're active partner. We want to push the boundaries. We want to know the platform, ideate together, and give opportunities. Sometimes designers don't know what is possible. For example, the talk last, what Nick talked about, Spring, all of this stuff might not, designers might think it's not possible, but it's actually easy for us. So let's ideate for those things. However, as we know, we need to communicate the limitations. We need to explain what are difficult, how much it's going to cost. But our role is explain why it's difficult, but we should overcome those difficulties. We need to find a way to overcome all of the blockers and not just go no for everything. And when we then build it, we want to break it down and simplify and see where we can cheat. I'm going to be talking about cheating a lot in this talk and so on. So we're going to take a deep dive in some animations we work together. We're going to be using this application we built together as an example. And I promise it's not a sales pitch, but I just need to explain what the application does so it gives you a little bit context. So it's a photographer's notebook where you take a picture, where you might want to take a photograph later. Maybe your camera wasn't with you and so on. So it's kind of a personalized notebook for photographers.
So, yeah, first example we wanted to bring is state changes. State changes can be used in different contexts. It can be just toggles from one state to the other. For example, unselected state to selected state. There could be a constant state like a loading state, so there should be a feedback that something is happening. Progress. It could be also used, for example, as a feedback that an action has been completed successfully, or, for example, if there is a failure. In this specific example, for this app, it was important for us that the user could customize his experience, so add their specific categories, photography topic, to the app, so that the app could be meaningful for them. And we had it in the onboarding part, these different cards with topics, and the user would basically choose which topic are their preferred ones. So just different cards with selection of topics, and the user could select or unselect. The beginning was just a toggle, like in the right example, but we felt this was a little bit too mechanical, so we tried to add a little bit of fluidity into it. So yeah, just create a quick storyboard. Storyboard, usually I do it when it comes from, like, we have the animation idea, and then it really helpful to basically break down the animation in different parts. This is just quick one, so it's just 3 phases, but for more complex animation, it really helps to make sure that you don't forget any of the elements in the different steps. Doesn't have to be like that. It could also be like sketches, but it's a quite useful technique, also used by illustrators and animators in the past. So in this case, we just have a trigger, the tap. Then we wanted to animate the icon from a plus to become an X, rotating it, and then the icon of the category from unselected state to selected state. So for having the little icon animation, we used Shapeshifter. I don't know how many of you have already used Shapeshifter, or maybe heard of it. Okay, cool. So just very quick dive into it. Shapeshifter allows you to create your, it's great for exporting basically animated vector drawables. You can create your own vector or import it. Once the vector is uploaded, you can see that each vector has different properties, and you can animate all of them. So in our case, we wanted to change the color from unselected to selected. So tapping on the little icon up there to the right, you can just choose different properties, so fill color in this case, change the color value. And what we also wanted to do is basically rotate the icon itself. So to do this, you can use groups. Groups are great because in each group you can have different vectors, and they can animate within the group while the group is animating. So basically, group at different properties, for example, pivot, rotation, scale, and so on. And again, you can select the little icon up there, and for us, we wanted basically to rotate it. So I just set the time, start time, end time of the animation. So 200 milliseconds in our case, and then from value 0 to value 135 in this case. And that's it. So we had like very quick, simple animation. The best part of it, when it comes to the export it, because no, sorry, very last thing about Shapeshifter. If you wanna try more, like this type of icon is really simple, but you can also reach very complex icon examples. So if you wanna discover more, just follow Alex. There are like great examples on that. So like I was saying, exporting. Exporting is really great because you can export basically directly an XML or different sprite sheets in different formats, or SVG, HTML, and so on.
So Nick talked a little bit animated vectors already. I'm not going to go too much into details of this one, but I like this format. So it is readable, it's human readable what you get out from Shapeshifter. For example, we needed the animations both directions, like Nick mentions, you have to go between states. So I don't actually have to go and ask my designer to create me the other part of this as well. I can just go and switch the colors here. The colors are just normal code, and I can switch them around and save the file with a different name, and I have the other one. Nick talked about the states already, and it's great part of this. You use these state drawables, use them because the operating system worries about this. My approach to creating and writing an animation is that if anything I can offload to the operating system, and I don't have to worry about it. Google has tested it, and I can't be bothered to write tests normally, so I will let Google worry about it. So push everything you can, and states is it's a great example. Again, you saw this in the previous thing, so I'm not going to go too much into details, but animated selectors allows you to change the states between, it's an extension of a selector, and it allows you to define the transition between different states. Refer to Nick's talk if you want to have a deep dive into this one. So then we ended up having this one. But actually, the code I only showed you did only one part. This is the actual app running in the system. So we talked only about the number 2 on the far side, but of course there was the other part as well. And Android gives us really good tools to create this kind of animations very, very simply. I created this one cell in my recycler view, and I used constraint layout to allow to lay them on top of each other. The reason there's view and then there's an image view comes apparent soon. But you have to sometimes add a little bit more views into your hierarchy than is the optimal amount, just so you can animate them easily. The first thing, of course, is the color changes when it's selecting stages. So I used a selector. So this is one of those points where I could go for perfection and animate some kind of color change or whatever, but it doesn't matter. If you look at the animation, I bet none of you realize that the color doesn't fade nicely. It just changes to one of the states. So cut corners where you can't. There's no worth putting time on this one if you can do something more meaningful. Next part, stateless animator. Also Nick talked about this. So I can define animations in the XML and again tie it into state. So when the state changes, different things changes. So in this case, I scale the background to 0 and 1. And what ties all of this together is this beautiful little attribute, duplicate parent state in your XML. Because of course, the main XML, the main layout is going to be selected when user selects it. So now we need to synchronize it all the way through the hierarchy. So if you just add this little small thing there. And the other one, which is super magical, I think, is adding this ripple effect. So whenever you write in code and your designer forgets to give you touch state or something definition, just drop this in if the element is touchable and it doesn't have touch already. So then you end up having a nice little animation in there. The great thing about letting the operating system worry about this is that if the user abuses your system, it changes the state and the animations will then, at the end when the animation calms down, you are always in valid state. If you try to synchronize them yourself, you might end up in trouble.
So yeah, next one, navigation transition. Here is where the things get a little bit more tricky. Navigation transition, usually it's where there is a change of context. Hero animation are a great example to express continuity of the element from one view to the other ones, for example. But it could also be, for example, card expanding into a detail view and so on. In our example, we had this list of photo nodes, and the user could basically see the node as in a form of a list or of a map. So at the end, we had this toggle changing from the list view to the map view, but it didn't feel quite right because the content itself, it's the same. It's just the way how it gets displayed that differs. So we said, okay, let's maybe think it differently. We kind of took the Google Maps approach, and we said, okay, what if the list is on the top of the car and you can basically slide it down to show the map and slide it up again to see the list. So for this one, I used different tool, Adobe XD. There are like different ones. There is InVision Studio, Premiere X. Those are kind of interaction-based tools. So you can link gesture interaction, which basically trigger the animation, the different types of animations. In this case, what I did is to create like the different states, set the trigger, set the type of easing, the duration. And what I get is a sort of preview in the design tool itself of how the animation feels. So I can already see if the direction is good or not. So from this point of view, the endover, it's a little bit more, let's say, trickier. You could export the video itself to the developers or the link so it can play directly on the mobile or on the device itself. What I also found quite useful is to basically when the navigation the navigation pattern is quite long, so you have like different views and state and so on, to kind of export directly hotspots. For example, in Zeppelin offers this opportunity, so you can kind of know, especially if you have not been part from the discussion at the beginning, you can see how the different views interact with each other. And then, of course, you can also give the developers some hint about the easing and all the different values. But the most important part here is the communication. And I wanted to highlight it here because the problem is that you are not giving or exporting a sort of ready-made code or asset that you can just throw into the code, but it should be in this case, it was built natively. So it's really important to communicate what's possible, what's not possible, and iterate on it.
And if you're a developer, don't be afraid to ask questions. So we tend to guess wrong as developers. It's easier to ask the question first and then do it right than try to improvise sometimes. Okay, you all know how this was made, right? Constraint sets, motion layout. Again, I'm not going to talk about it. Let's talk tomorrow, exactly this topic. But this line here, the last line here, if you haven't looked at Transition Manager, especially begin delay transition, take a look. It's a magic line of code that makes things animate in your UI very easily. It's worth the time. So this is what we ended up with. I don't know if our guys are here in the audience, but this was the end result wasn't quite this, but it was good enough for us to release, and you can try it in the Google Play Store if you want to. Next type of animation, screen size. Android screen size animation that wasn't the case just a year ago or 2 years ago. But now it's becoming a thing. So now you have to be prepared for Chrome OS. You don't know what size your window is going to be, and user can drag and drop it, and now you can fold your phones and all of these things. And if you just animate, if you don't animate, if you just resize, it's quite boring. It's quite difficult to follow what's happening. Where did the data go and where so on? So you might want to do something better. So this is, for example, Pierre would do this kind of game list on things and actually do nice transitions. But this gave me a flashback because I was standing at that state there last year and talking about this exact topic. So I'm not going to go it again. That talk there's a video of it. The technical side of that talk is outdated. Ignore all of that. The design side of it is completely valid yet. We talk about why it matters that you should just use the empty space and how you should utilize the bigger screen and so on. Fortunately, also Google released a code lab for Chrome OS that how you can animate between different layouts. Just go and try this code lab and you're good.
So next one is onboarding. Onboarding could be quite useful because you could show through motion what the app does. So not just show a static example of an app feature, but also like example of interaction of the app. And it could also be useful for highlight some elements, some feature, giving some hints to the user. So that was our onboarding. It's basically very simple screen, one screen with the possibility to sign in. But yeah, we had this sort of illustration type on the top, but we were not really happy with it. So we said, like, okay, let's try to push it a little bit farther. So what we thought is that to better illustrate the functionality of the app, we would use sort of animation in which the hand with the phone comes in, takes the picture, and then after taking the picture, actually you get the smart categories, which are basically the topic you have set up and comes from the ML kit. So to do this, I used After Effects. After Effects, it's a quite complex tool. You can do like very complex animations. So it's like timeline based. You can add keyframes with different effects and so on. This was basically the sort of output or idea I had, and we came up with. But how to translate this or how to implement this? Of course, we used probably you used it or heard of it already. We used Lottie, and for basically as an export tool, it's really straightforward. What you do is just to select the composition when you want to export, where you want to export to, and then export it. And then basically the output is going to be a JSON file. Just quick thing about Lottie. It's really useful. There are a lot of guidelines, both for platform implementation, but also for the designers. There are like tips how to better create animations in After Effects. Here there are a couple of them. For example, keep it really simple. Try to do not add too many effects because they might break. Try to convert layers to shape layers because of course they are lighter, and then you don't need to create a separate asset folder for it. And also export at 1x, so your composition should be basically at 1x, and then the system would basically scale it up and take care of the rest. Another useful thing is like Lottie as an app, and in the app you can basically check the performance of your output, and also gives you like some warnings. Like for in this case, some of the merge paths were only supported from KitKat Plus and so on. So you can basically designer can directly check if the output is good or not within the app. And it's basically what it comes out of it.
So this is not quite as readable as the Android vector drawable code. Fortunately, you don't have to read it. If you have to look into this, you've done something wrong already. So you basically treat it as a binary or something that you get from the designer, and you ignore what's in it. You just get a JSON file, you drop it in resource folder, and that's it. But we have the other part of the handover, what we do with Zeppelin. So it's still, you need to figure out, okay, this is the animation, where does it go, what's the paddings, what's the margins, and so on. So we simply use Zeppelin and one image. Unfortunately, Zeppelin doesn't currently support adding Lottie directly into it, so there's just an image, but we can understand what it is. The cool thing about Lottie is it's just a custom view in your layout. You just drop a custom view. It supports listeners that you can hook into end of the animation when it's running and so on. And it's just a library you put in. They just released 3.0, I think, last week or the week before. It's worth looking into if you haven't looked for a while. They did a lot of new things and a lot of optimization. They optimized, for example, the size. It's a very tiny library and doesn't add a lot of methods into it. Great thing is that what they've done, really nice things, like it supports the normal Android image view positioning, so you can just use scale types in there, the way you learn to use them. And it's even compatible with motion layout, so you can synchronize your drags and drops with the motion layout. So this is what we ended up with, and I think it's much nicer as animated. At least it makes the user feel more welcome when they come to the things. Then the next type of animation. This is like we didn't come up with a name with this one, so we did something is happening behind the scenes. The point is that not anything needs to be animated, and I'm not talking about just having a loading spinner happening somewhere. With this one, I mean something more complex, something that affects the user's work, something that the user needs to understand what's going on. Everybody understands it's just loading from a server and data comes in. You don't need to do anything special with this one. So here's an example. Excuse our messy office, because I filmed this in our office. But the first version of the application is when you take a picture, there's a spinner, then something happens, and then you have some categories here. Great, works super nice, but a little bit confusing the user. So we improved it. The next version is we added the... Oh, didn't work? Let's try again. Okay, we added the better loading spinner. Doesn't really matter so much. But we also made clear for the user that the computer is figuring out what's going on. I have no idea where it says bird in this one, but saw a bird in that one. But we also categorized a little bit differently this thing. So it was much more clear to the user. The computer is looking at the picture you did. It's trying to suggest you something. Maybe you want to do these things. This looked very complex first when I looked at it. I got it from Pier, but turned out this was actually very easy to do. This was half an hour or so to do. So you have to cheat. Some things that are too difficult to do. So randomly animating things in random places is very difficult. You don't know when they overlap. You don't know how they appear and so on. So I cheated in this one. So these dots appear here. I actually hard-coded 5 different dots into the UI. I knew where they're going to be. I just hard-coded coordinates in there. And instead of randomizing where they appear, I randomized the order they appear in. This is good enough for users that use these applications. They don't get to use to the pattern they are, and they don't pay so much attention. It looks like it's random every time, and it gives the right feeling of it animating. So cheat where you can. This cut my development time a lot. Layout, in this case, is also difficult. You kind of have to move things around and so on. But constraint layout is really awesome. There's a lot of tools if you look into constraint layout, what you can do this kind of transition very easily. Again, I cheated a little bit. I had the coordinates, but I didn't actually use coordinates. I used biases. So this is the transformation between 2 different layouts. Very easy. You've all done this before. And if you haven't, try it again. Just 2 constraint sets. But this is where the magic of this thing happens. And 2 lines. So I just set horizontal bias and vertical bias. So then it doesn't matter what screen size it is. And when it animates to a smaller screen, the dots are still separated nicely. And I don't have to worry about it. I could have done X coordinates, start X and end X, and try to animate them there. But I didn't have to. I literally write 2 lines of code and let Android worry about the whole thing.
So next one, as we have seen already, there are some animation that can add additional value or delight to your app or to your product. They could be used, for example, to reinforce the brand or celebrate specific moments in the user journey. This is another product, hobby project we have developed together, and it's basically a step counter. This is actually our main screen. So there is the home screen, which is the core screen of the app, where you have the count of your steps and your friends and so on. But we said like, okay, this is the screen where if we should invest basically more time into. So we said, okay, let's try to do something with this static toolbar on the top. So we discussed a little bit, and we came up with this idea of having basically different assets and different colors depending the time of the day. So when you would open the app, the sun, or indeed the moon, would basically move to his position, to the relative position, but then you could still basically scroll up the whole thing and go back to the normal blue toolbar. So what I did here is to create like the different states for each time of the day, and then I exported to using Zeppelin to Juhani the different gradients, so it could take basically the different endpoints for the color values, and the different assets, of course, of the sun and the moon and clouds and so on, depending on the moment of the day. And yeah, then I basically passed the ball to Juhani and I said, "Can you implement that?"
When you get a complex-looking thing from your designer, the first thing to do is look if I can't simplify it, if I can figure out how to break it into pieces. So again, I cheat where I can, I simplify where I can, and we define together what is good enough. So nothing doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be good enough. So I was surprised to see this in Nick's slide as well, actually quite happy. So the first thing I did, okay, let me simplify it. It's just going to be numbers between 0 and 1, and then I had a Boolean flag say day or night. This makes me think about this, like structure the problem, smaller problems, so I don't have to think about everything at once. I said, okay, I'm going to tie everything to these two values. Up. Some reason the animations don't work. Oh, now it worked. So the other thing is like, if you see how the moon and the sun work, they don't actually follow a curve, because I couldn't be bothered to do trigonometry or sines and cosines and so on. So it actually goes straight line. Who's going to know this, right? So why would I spend time working on that stuff? And because I simplified the 0 to 1, and I got all of these things, so all of these values just stack, and when I do scrolling, things will just work. So this was the result of things. So it animates and it still works during the animation. Doesn't matter when the user scrolls, and all of these things, they just work. And things are easy.
So yeah, let's add some motion. I think if every time we want to start and we want to get inspired, there are like a few examples that we could see. Like the internet is full. There are like different platforms. Usually, designers sometimes tend to go really crazy. So not everything that you find it's basically implementable, but there are like very good examples for inspirations and so on. One of those is, for example, lottifiles.com. It's quite useful. You can basically grab one of those examples and implement it basically straight away. It's also quite important and very useful to check out the material guidelines. They are very well done, and basically all the principles are in there. There are examples of do, don't, so it's very useful to check them out. And yeah, this kind of overview of tools I wanted to bring. I'm not gonna dive too much into specifics, but sometimes like I got asked which tool do you use for animation. The answer is it's like depends. So it really depends on the complexity of the animation, the type of animation. So it could be just a very simple interaction tool. It could be like more complex animation, so up down to After Effects and so on. And of course, depending also on the different workflows, then the handover and the implementation is going to be different. But depending on the tool, like I said already, it's really important to communicate the idea from the very first stage to the very final one. And that's where it comes in the iteration.
I believe that more iterations you fit in your application development, the better the application is going to be. So we work really hard to remove all friction between designers and developers. That's why we're here together. We work fast together. This is our short process of how we work when we go to animations. We discuss, we chat, we try out something very quickly. If you know Android, you can try out something super quickly. We keep iterating. We agree on okay, what is the right direction, and then we start polishing iterations. Quick example, this is an application we did over Christmas break. And we wanted to have the bubbles work in a certain way. We just didn't know how. So we started on Slack, because we are based in different cities. So we were talking, okay, what about this? What about this? So basically you see me sending image video files to Pierre. So we tried quite a few different things to figure out what is going to be the right thing to do. Worth noting that these were all done in half an hour. All of these 10 iterations were done in half an hour. So the faster you iterate, the better you know the platform, you need to support your designers, and better your application is going to be. I thought we're going to end up our presentation, everybody else is clapping already, with a couple of things that we find good in other applications we've seen, examples that we think are very good to look up to. Here's an interesting example. This is Google releasing 2 applications for one purpose for some reason, like they often do. I think this one here, which is the Google Now, is amazing. It's very pleasant to add like or less on something. Google News, on the other hand, is pretty crap in that one. So this is, again, one company can create something that is great and something that isn't so great. So look at Google Now, not so much on this one. Android Auto is really great. For some reason, the animations don't start correctly. Okay, now it's starting. The animation doesn't have to be complex to be great. I love this navigation happening here. This simple animation is going to tell me that if you don't do anything, the system will press that button for you. It doesn't have to be complex. It's extremely powerful, extremely useful. Google Fit. I love the animations between the week, day, and month things. The reason I love this, that if you follow it, it will help the user to track where the data goes. You see that the data follows in different states, and the mental model of the user helps the mental model of the user to follow where the data went. I asked Twitter what animations are quite nice, and somebody said the Twitter-like animation is quite nice. And it actually is quite nice. It's very simple. You do that a lot on Twitter. Again, doesn't have to be super complicated to be good. Then there's this one, drops. How many of you have tried drops? Try it, it's great. It has a lot of animation. Everything's moving around. The animations are super well polished. Don't do this in your application. The reason it's great on drops, it's a game. Games have different rules than our applications do. If this was your application for looking at your shopping list or whatever, you would hate this after using a while. Because it's a game for learning languages, it's awesome, it's great, it deserves the best app award it got. But don't do this in normal applications. One of my favorite applications in the store is Share to Meal. Let's see if the animation starts now. It starts now. Very simple animations. They emphasize the call to action at the bottom. The gradient, we can discuss if that's great or not. But thing is, it adds motion, it adds emotion, it adds connection to the people you donate. And I want to end our talk. Consider downloading this application and give money to people who actually need it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.